When you think of the French national team, images probably appear in your head of success. Maybe you see Kylian Mbappe scoring some great goals. Maybe you see David Trezeguet's goal in Euro 2000. Maybe you see Paul Pogba dancing around the pitch in Moscow. But that doesn't mean that international football teams don't have bad eras. During the time that Spain were the dominant forces in international football, France were at their lowest ebb. This story has a bit of everything, kick-starting from a 2006 World Cup final defeat into a surprise early exit at Euro 2008 into an absolute catastrophe at the 2010 World Cup. If that wasn't enough to wet your whistle, I'll tell you that this retelling includes an indecent marriage proposal, a mutiny, one of the worst acts of sporting foul play ever seen, fighting, players hiding on buses, and presidential intervention. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the implosion of France's 2010 World Cup. Our story begins on the 9th of July 2006. Italy and France duelling it out for the Jules Rimet trophy. And by duelling, I really mean duelling. Yes, the masterful Zinedine Zidane's final match in football ended in ruin as he was sent off for a headbutt on Matteo Materazzi. I won't get into it too much at this stage, as I'm sure to cover the 2006 World Cup in greater detail later on down the line, but what I will say is the incident was major and ultimately culminated in France finishing as runners-up. What was clear though in the aftermath was that the Zinedine Zidane era was over. Of that 1998 World Cup winning starting lineup, only Lilian Thuram remained. A new generation was upon us, and no doubt it was full of talent. Henry, Ribéry, Malouda, Makelele, Evra, Nasri, and Anelka, I could go on and on. So France needn't worry, right? Sure, they'd just lost a World Cup final, but the next generation was full of talent, no? Equally as reassuring was that Raymond Domenech was continuing as the French national team manager. Sure, he was a little bit odd, and there was rumours that he left out Robert Pires because of his astrology sign being a Scorpio, but the man had just guided France to a World Cup final, so him remaining in post had to be seen as a positive. Alas, fragmentation of Domenech's tenure had already begun during Euro 2008 qualifying when Jose Mourinho accused him of treating Makelele like a slave. See, Makelele had actually come out of retirement for the 2006 World Cup, and on conclusion of the tournament, he re-announced that he wouldn't be playing anymore for France. Yet Domenech just kept calling him up anyway. Regardless, France did qualify for Euro 2008 with relative ease. I say relative as they did succumb to 2 defeats to Scotland en route to Austria and Switzerland, but nevertheless, they'd made it. Something that England infamously failed to do. But this video isn't about the Wally with the brolly, it's about Le Blues. And they were heading into their first tournament since that World Cup final defeat.
C4. C4, so the last match of this group will be Netherlands, France. This is fantastic.
France were drawn into Group C in the tournament alongside fellow World Cup 2006 finalists Italy, previous winners the Netherlands, and underdogs Romania, who had risen to 12th in the FIFA World Rankings. It was the group of death, and France didn't know yet just how deadly it would prove to be. France's opening game of Euro 2008 would be against the potential banana skin of Romania. Yet one man seemed to be missing. The French team lined up for their usual team photo. But where was Thierry Henry? Yes, a brazen move by Domenech to leave out the Frenchman and instead go with Anelka and Benzema. Despite the odd choice, it would easily be enough to beat the minnows Romania, right? Wrong. France dominated swaths of possession throughout the game but rarely threatened the Romanian goal. Both Anelka and Benzema were subbed off during the game, but still Thierry Henry didn't emerge. A slow start was the worst start for France, who still had the Netherlands and Italy to come. And it was the Dutch who were next for Domenech's men, who had started perfectly by beating Italy by 3-0. Henry was back starting in this one with Anelka and Benzema, back on the bench. However, this didn't prevent the Netherlands taking an early lead through Dirk Kuyt. A second was added on the hour mark with Robin van Persie giving the French a mountain to climb. Henry got his tournament firing by halving the deficit 10 minutes after, but two late strikes by Robin and Schneider saw the Netherlands win by 4-1, and France's Euro 2008 campaign was hanging by a thread. In their final group match, it was all to play for. The Netherlands were through as group winners already, but the other three teams still had it all to play for. Romania sat on 2 points, whilst Italy and France both were on 1. Benzema came back into the starting lineup alongside Henry this time, with Malouda relegated to the bench. Drama in Zurich prevailed as Eric Abidal was sent off for a last-ditch tackle on Luca Toni, which saw Pirlo score the resulting penalty, and France were down to 10 men. Daniele De Rossi finished off the job late on, and France finished bottom of the group and was sent packing. Now, if I was to ask you what Raymond Domenech did next, you might have a few guesses. Maybe you might think that he would apologise to the French people. Maybe he might even see fit to resign. It wasn't anything like that. Remember how in the introduction I said there was an indecent marriage proposal to come? Yes, in the aftermath of France's Euro 2008 exit, Raymond Domenech decided this would be the perfect time to propose to his girlfriend on national television. He stated, "I only have one project, which is to marry Estelle. I told myself there are beautiful things in life. It's good to tell someone that you love her." Absolutely ludicrous. Astonishingly, the French Football Federation saw fit not to fire Raymond Domenech after this display, with 18 of 19 board members agreeing that he should stay on. This was in spite of public criticism from the likes of Zinedine Zidane saying that he should lose his job. Perhaps they agreed with the manager's thoughts that France's failure was the fault of bad luck, harsh refereeing and unfavourable weather. Either way, the circus will be clowning around all the way down to South Africa. Now, France's qualification story for the 2010 World Cup is its own story within itself. They were drawn alongside Serbia, Austria, Lithuania, Romania and the Faroe Islands. A by no means easy group, but certainly one France would expect to win, though this didn't end up being the case. Drawing home and away to Romania, losing to Austria, only winning 1-0 in both fixtures versus Lithuania, saw the Blues struggle to get firing. This inconsistency saw them finish second in the group, and they would have to go through the playoffs. Now here is where we see our first controversy. 8 teams were in the playoffs from the European section, with 4 to qualify. In September 2009, FIFA announced they would be seeding teams based on their world ranking position. So France, Portugal, Russia and Greece, the seeded teams, couldn't be drawn to play against each other. Now FIFA had indicated that seeding would not take place, but when the likes of France and Portugal and also Germany were in the second place position in their groups, they soon changed that because they didn't want them facing off against one another. Germany ended up winning their group, so it wasn't a problem, but it's very clear from the outside that FIFA were up to their old tricks. Tally up another contentious FIFA decision in the 2000s, everyone. Regardless, fortuitous or not, France had avoided playing a high-ranked nation and instead would face the Republic of Ireland. They had gone through the entirety of qualification without losing a game, frustrating Italy twice in 2 draws, but France simply had to beat them. The first leg took place in a packed-out Croke Park in Dublin. A nervy affair followed. The only goal came in the 72nd minute when a pot shot from Nicolas Anelka deflected off Sean St Ledger and flew into the back of the net. It was a cruel way to settle a very evenly matched first leg. This gave France all of the leverage heading in to that second leg. They just had to finish the job and qualify for the 2010 World Cup. The odds were stacked against the Republic of Ireland going into that second leg, but Robbie Keane had equalised in the 30th minute, taking the tie to 1-1 on aggregate. France were shell-shocked. For a team with the talent of Evra and Benzema and Thierry Henry, they really shouldn't be struggling in a match like this. They should have already qualified, had their feet up, just waiting for South Africa. But no, instead they were here fighting for their international lives. The game went all the way through to extra time until the 103rd minute when France were given a free kick. It was here that controversy reared its head again as Malouda whipped the ball in, Henry controlled with his arm and knocks it back across the gallows to turn home. Ireland were incensed, but the referees hadn't seen it. There was no VAR to intervene, and thus the goal stood. To add insult to injury, it was also offside. It would end up being the winning goal, the one that sent France to the World Cup, and the Republic of Ireland missed out. In the aftermath, FIFA and the football associations of France and Ireland deliberated on the best course of action. In the end, Ireland were awarded €5 million in compensation, but France's World Cup place was upheld. Raymond Domenic's men had made it in the most controversial of circumstances. It was clear the team had a lot of work to do to be ready for the World Cup, given their dismal qualification campaign. Failing to get a tune out of some of the best players in the world was the fault of the coach. The mood of the nation was one filled with pessimism, unsurprising given how poorly they'd performed since that 2006 World Cup final. Whether they deserved it or not, France were here. And limping over the line, they missed out on that all-important pot 1 and instead were in the mystery pot of pot number 4. This meant they had a very strong likelihood of getting one of the favourites for the tournament in their group. Amazingly though, the footballing gods continued to smile down on France as they were drawn against South Africa, a million times better than the other teams they could have faced. Although it has to be said they were slightly less lucky when they drew Mexico from pot 2 and Uruguay from pot 3. Regardless, this had to put a spring in the step of Domenic's men. Though this spring didn't last long. Fusion and anger were already rife ahead of the 2010 World Cup, when the likes of Patrick Vieira, Karim Benzema and Samir Nasri were left out of the 2010 World Cup squad. Instead, international rookies such as Envia and Valbuena were called up despite their limited caps. The first bust up in the French camp arrived just 24 hours before their opening match, when Florent Malouda had to be restrained by Patrice Evra from going at the manager Raymond Dominic, a very bad omen for things to come. The all-eyes capturing curtain raiser between South Africa and Mexico delivered an absolute bang to start the tournament. Uruguay versus France, that happened just a few hours later, was the complete opposite. A dull, drab and just completely forgettable affair. Dominic lined his men up in a very rigid 4-5-1 with Anelka leading the line, a role that definitely didn't suit him, and Malouda being benched for Abu Dhabi because of that bust up the previous day. France dominated possession but were less than inventive with their chance creation, leading to a bore goalless draw. At one stage, Jeremy Toulalung was booked and a heated argument commenced between him and the referee, which required Dominic to enter the pitch to calm him down. It was all very puzzling. Zidane, after the match, quipped on French TV that the manager had lost control. It certainly seemed so, yet a 0-0 draw against a nation as strong as Uruguay wasn't the worst way to start the tournament. Mexico would be next, and a chance to banish the demons from the previous match. Dominic would reshuffle the lineup with Malouda coming back in for Johan Gourcuff, who it was rumoured that Anelka and Ribéry didn't want to pass to. At half-time though, France had been playing poorly, and Dominic decided to look towards his bench and bring on Gignac for Nicolas Anelka. The Chelsea striker didn't take this too well. Go get f***ed up your you dirty son of a Pretty damning words there from Anelka. Mexico would find a way past Hugo Lloris in the second half with goals from Javier Hernandez and a late penalty from Blanco. France's World Cup was hanging by a thread, and the worst was yet to come. Following the graphic tirade of language used by Anelka towards his coach, he was duly told to apologise or be sent home. He chose the latter. With their third and final match against South Africa looming, the players were training as normal. Fans and press were present at a very glum French training session. What they didn't expect to see though was an altercation between captain Patrice Evra and fitness coach Robert Duvernay, which again required the intervention of Dominic to hold back the Manchester United left back. Everyone in attendance was shocked, and things continued to worsen when Patrice Evra left the pitch to head towards the team bus, and the team followed. They duly drew the curtains and refused to continue training. This was a full-blown mutiny. When the players finally emerged, they had a letter for Dominic to read out to the press. All of the players, without exception, want to declare their opposition to the decision taken by the FFF to exclude Nicolas Anelka from the squad. It was all so surreal and shown how badly things had fallen apart. The nation watched from home in utter disbelief. Nicolas Sarkozy, the French president, sent down his sports minister to the camp in an attempt to remedy the situation. The backlash was immense. Eventually the players stood down and apologised, but the damage had already been done. It would take a miracle for France to recover in time for their last match. The team was much changed in their final match. Evra was removed from the team, with Gael Clichy replacing him. Djibril Cissé led the line with Gorkov in behind. Thierry Henry, yes, remember him? He was still on the bench and had still yet to play even 1 minute of this tournament, but it didn't matter. France were in absolute disarray and were 2-0 down at half-time, with Johan Gorkov sent off for a deliberate elbow. A short-lived second half rally that saw Malouda halve the deficit wasn't enough. France was out in last place. In one final act of complete pettiness, Raymond Dominic refused to shake the hand of his South African counterpart at the end of the match. Absolutely pathetic. And that was that. France bowed out of the 2010 World Cup in disgrace, forced to fly home in economy seating by the French Football Federation. The whole ordeal had been completely farcical and no one came out looking clean. Raymond Dominic was constantly at odds with his players, always inconsistent when it came to tactics, and was just lurching from disaster to disaster. The players themselves didn't look good either. They had majorly failed at 2 straight international tournaments, sulked at every opportunity and brought themselves into complete disrepute. The French Football Federation were to blame too. They should have sacked Raymond Dominic at the end of Euro 2008, but were cowardly in keeping him on for the 2010 World Cup. And their refusal for dialogue with the players only made the situation worse. No matter which way you slice it, this was perhaps the greatest World Cup meltdown ever seen, when just 4 years prior they had been in the World Cup final. When the dust settled, decisions had to be made. Raymond Dominic was sacked for serious misconduct during the World Cup. He later received almost €1 million in compensation for this, but still his reputation was tarnished. His hopes to return to football management were not forthcoming, with him regularly rejected for job roles he applied for. In December 2020 though, he was very bizarrely appointed as the new manager of Nantes, 10 years after being sacked by France. He duly only lasted 8 games in charge and not winning a single one. He's also now separated from the woman he proposed to at Euro 2008, although it is said they are still good friends, so perhaps it's not all doom and gloom. As for the players, they were all dropped in the first international call-ups of the new cycle. 4 players key to the mutiny received longer bans. With Anelka getting an 18-match ban, this ended his international career. Evra received a 5-match ban, Ribéry with 3, and Toulalan with 1. Laurent Blanc came in as a new manager in an attempt to usher in a new era, one unshackled from the disaster of the 2010 World Cup. Unfortunately, he wasn't very successful either. France qualified for Euro 2012, but only just got through the group in second place and were defeated comfortably by Spain in the quarterfinals. Didier Deschamps succeeded him, and as they say, the rest is history. Yet this period of international football cannot be forgotten. France, one of the most feared international nations, utterly imploded on the world stage, and that is one for the history books. The absurdity of Raymond Dominic, the indecent proposer, astrology following, tactically inconsistent fire starter is synonymous with this failed French era. Players themselves, such as Thierry Henry, Patrice Evra, Franck Ribéry, who were so revered and so successful for their club sides, had utterly failed on the international stage. Fortunately for France, this generation is now relegated to a footnote in the history of French football, with the subsequent generation making 3 finals and becoming World Cup champions. Will we see a collapse of this magnitude again? It's impossible to know. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out my video on the Spain 2008-2012 dynasty that saw them win 3 international honours in a row. But until next time, thanks for watching.